Panama around 1577. In the battle for the riches of the New World, there were many strange incidents. Like this one, during John Oxenham's attempt to take Panama from Spain with just 50 men.
In nomine Patris Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
We think of pirates as brigands and outlaws running up the Jolly Roger. But the pirates of the 16th century were often politicians and explorers. They did not see themselves as godless corsairs, but as gentlemen, working for the good of their own countries and not simply for greed. In the 16th century, who was a pirate and who a hero was a question of politics. The battle for power in the New World was largely fought between Elizabeth I of England and Philip II of Spain. In 1492, Columbus landed in the Bahamas and discovered the Americas. Spain ordered the discoveries to be kept secret. Intrepid Spanish explorers were dazzled by the cascades of gold they found in Mexico, land of the Aztec and the Maya Indians.
We saw things Christians had never seen before. Savages who believed the sun was God, and their God scattered wealth to them. There was so much. It was as if we went into a bakery and saw loaves and loaves of gold, as if we went into a butcher's and saw joints and joints of silver. It should have made us humble, amazed, but it made us cruel to the savages. And we took all they had.
In 1519, Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico. The Aztecs believed he was the god of the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl, who their legends foretold would come from the east. That myth and his cannons allowed Cortés to conquer them with ease and to achieve his real aim, looting their gold. The Spanish pushed south into Peru, where they discovered fabulous gold and silver mines at places like Potosi. They mined ruthlessly. And from far off Madrid, the King of Spain sent out decree after decree.
I will have fleets. They will sail twice a year from Nombre de Dios to protect our gold and silver.
The rest of Europe envied and feared the new wealth of the Spanish. Portugal argued that Spain had no right to take all the New World.
I draw a line around the world. East of that line, all new lands and seas belong to Portugal. West of this line, all new lands belong to Spain.
But not everyone accepted the Pope's authority. New Protestant beliefs challenged Rome. In London, in Paris, in Amsterdam, rulers did not accept that the Pope had the right to divide the New World and give all of it to his Catholic allies.
Black ivory is worth even more than gold.
I like these trifles, and I should like some more.
To give my queen what she desires makes me content.
The political and religious turmoil bred official and unofficial piracy. Some pirates were licensed by their governments and given clear instructions as to who they could attack. This was called privateering. Some pirates would not be remembered but for the fact that the Spanish kept obsessive records of every ship that was in the Caribbean as they tried to maintain control over their huge empire.
I will have fleets. They will sail twice a year from Nombre de Dios to protect our gold and silver. From Nombre de Dios, the galleons will sail to Cartagena to refresh themselves.
Then the fleet sailed northwest towards Jamaica and Havana, where they met up with treasure ships from Veracruz. From Havana, the fleet, often 150 ships strong, sailed back to Spain. The temptation for pirates was very great. The young Queen Elizabeth inherited a near bankrupt kingdom. She was a Protestant and had no love of Spain, but she did not dare risk war.
At least, not an official war.
There was also a war for the Queen's attention. Factions at court competed. Some were for, some against piracy. Elizabeth often changed her mind. In 1567, Elizabeth took a risk. She gave Sir John Hawkins one of her greatest ships, the 1,000-ton Jesus of Lubeck. With the ship came specific instructions on how far Hawkins could go in antagonizing the King of Spain. Probably no one understood the Queen's problems better than Sir John Hawkins. He came from Plymouth and saw himself as a trader who sometimes had to resort to arms. Throughout the 1560s, Hawkins courted the Spanish ambassador in London. He wished to trade in slaves in the West Indies with the permission of the King of Spain. On October the 2nd, 1567, Hawkins set sail with 6 ships and 408 men. They sailed down the coast of Africa collecting slaves, and then headed off across the Atlantic. Hawkins landed at Margarita, a small island off Venezuela, and immediately sent a friendly note to the Spanish governor.
Worshipful, I have touched on your island only to refresh my men with fresh victuals, which from my money or wares you shall sell me. I mean to stay but 5 or 6 days, in which time you can assure yourself there shall be no damage done to any man. This my mistress, Queen Elizabeth, commanded me to have great care of.
Most Spanish settlements did not dare to trade. Then he was driven into San Juan de Ulua by a storm. Meeting resistance, he seized the fort and its 12 guns. Hawkins intended to stay until the storm had passed, and he had refitted his ships for the trip home. A few days later, to his dismay, he saw a Spanish fleet in the full glory of its colors.
To deny them access to their port would be an act of war. We must not have hostilities.
Sir John, you cannot trust their goodwill.
We must try. I sent an envoy to the commander, Don Martin Enriquez. I suggested each side should leave 10 hostages, that there should be no hostilities, and that we would pay for our refitting, and then we would set sail. Don Martin agreed the terms.
But Hawkins was a Protestant pirate. Promises to Protestants didn't count. In the evening, the Spaniards attacked the English ships. The men that Hawkins had left ashore were attacked, and most of them were murdered. Hawkins' flagship, the Jesus of Lubeck, had to be abandoned in the bay. Only 2 boats survived. Hawkins was forced to land 100 men in the Bahamas. Hawkins' men were reduced to living in caves and trying to eat the bats. Few of these men ever got back to England. The man who was least surprised by the behavior of the Spanish was Francis Drake, a young relative of Hawkins. When he was 9 years old, Drake and his family had been forced to flee their comfortable farm in Devon because of a Catholic uprising in the west of England. From then on, Drake hated Catholics and Spaniards. Both Hawkins and Drake had traumatic journeys back to England and bitter memories of the treachery of the Spanish.
Don Martin broke his word, which he gave to me, your officer.
There is a Spanish ship moored in the Thames at Greenwich. Seize it. Your king has drawn these inconveniences upon himself.
But Elizabeth continued to be cautious. She refused any more immediate, flamboyant revenge, the kind of revenge Drake wanted. Drake was a fine seaman with all the qualities needed to be a privateer, bar one. He had no experience of court life and its intrigues. He hardly knew anyone of importance. For 2 years, he tried to see the Queen. Drake's chance finally came in 1571 after the arrest of 7 conspirators who planned to kill the Queen. In the Tower of London, they confessed that the Spanish ambassador had backed their plan.
Your Majesty.
I have suffered diverse injuries for many years now at the hands of the King of Spain.
I will bring you revenge, Your Majesty.
Not too much revenge. We are not at war with Spain.
Not officially at war.
I have suffered too long.
Drake finally obtained his permissions and the finance he needed. With the Queen's consent, he won the backing of many important financiers. Drake was nervous the Queen might change her mind, so he fitted out his ships and left without delay. Although he had a crew of only 71 men, he was sure they would be enough to thoroughly loot the whole of Panama. In 1572, Drake arrived at Nombre de Dios, bent on gold, glory, and revenge. This small port on the coast was one of the assembly points for mule trains from Ecuador and Peru. Treasure was stacked here, waiting for the Spanish fleet to arrive. Drake approached Nombre de Dios from the south. He sent one group of men to take out the battery of 6 guns on this hill, and another to take the fort. It was meticulously planned. The Spanish abandoned the town. Drake first went into the governor's house, which was situated here. He found most of the gold had been removed. There was a stack of silver, but it was too heavy to move.
Drake sent a troop of us to search the rest of the town. We found the king's treasury, set in the fine gardens here. But inside, we found nothing. Suddenly we felt afeared and sick at heart. The Spanish were gathering outside the town to attack us.
It started to rain. They did not dare go into the open now. Their muskets, flintlocks, and gunpowder would get wet. They would be at the mercy of the Spaniards.
We must return to the ships as soon as we can. As soon as we can.
The fiasco taught Drake the need for precise intelligence, and that he had to be willing to improvise. He was determined they would not leave the Caribbean without a prize. On his next attempt, at Chagres, one drunken sailor made so much noise that the Spanish mule train he was lying in wait for had warning of the ambush. The third time, the local Indians showed Drake a way through the hills and jungles of Panama. They ambushed the mules and managed to capture 150,000 golden pesos, silver and jewels. They drifted for 6 hours downstream on the Chagres to their hidden anchorage. But the expedition had taken its toll. Half of Drake's men, including his brothers, died of yellow fever and jungle sores. While he had been in Panama, Indians also showed Drake a sight he would never forget, the rolling Pacific, a sea he would one day sail. Drake sailed back for England. The journey was quick by the standards of the day. But when he reached Plymouth in August 1573, he found a messenger waiting.
Her Majesty commands you to disappear.
What? Why?
We've made peace with the Spaniards. They call you a devil.
But Her Majesty herself sent me.
That was 18 months ago, Francis. Now she may marry the King of Spain. In a year, who knows?
Do people realize what I've achieved?
Oh, you're famous. Too famous to be in England. And now, the Queen begs me to inspect the accounts of the treasure you stole. She's owed her share.
So, for the next 2 years, Drake disappeared from history in line with the Queen's wishes.
Drake would never tell me where he had hidden himself. Some said he had disappeared to Wales, others that he buried treasure in America. His little pleasure was to keep this secret from his queen.
When he returned to England, he found he had to wait again. Yet though he had to wait, Drake was to be the most famous of all the privateers and pirates. His raid on Panama was only the first of his exploits. Sir Walter Raleigh came from Devon like Drake. Drake was a man of action, not a dreamer. Raleigh was a dreamer. As a boy, Raleigh also learned to sail. But unlike Drake, he was educated at Oxford and the Inns of Court. He was a poet, a visionary, a financier, a soldier, and the man who almost founded America on the profits of piracy.
Your Majesty, a colony on the new land of America would make an ideal base for attacking Spanish ships between Florida and the Bahamas.
Elizabeth gave her permission, and in 1584, the first British expedition to colonize America set out. Here, they found a flat land, full of marshes and little islands.
I told my men to name the colony Virginia, in honor of Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen.
They landed and soon encountered the local Indians. From the start, there were tensions. Most of the colonists were soldiers. They thought more of plunder than of planting. They expected the Indians to feed them in return for trinkets. At first, the Indians were curious.
I'm finding it hard not to laugh.
Don't. I know it's strange to us, but it's beautiful.
Might be a trap. Keep your hand on your sword.
They come in peace. We come in peace.
You come in dreams.
The dispatches from the Virginia colony suggested that at first they established peaceful contact with the Indians. I was pleased that John Lane drew the natives and studied their curious heathen society, but it was hard for us to ship out supplies as Spain threatened to attack England.
How can you draw when you're hungry?
I'll ask them again to spare what they can.
We all agree. The best way to get supplies is to set sail while we still can and steal a prize.
I'm a settler, not a pirate.
And a saint.
Piracy is no way to establish a colony.
I imagined the settlers foraging for every atomy of grain. I prayed, but my prayers would not fill their stomachs. No word came from them. I knew from my travels that the savages might smile one day and murder the next.
In June 1586, when they were on the brink of starvation, the colonists saw a great fleet off the coast. It was Drake, on his way back from the Caribbean. He did his best to help. He left a ship and many supplies. But most of the colonists wanted to return home with Drake. Only 15 men were willing to stay on to maintain the colony of Virginia. None of them were ever seen again. But even in this heroic age, there were more selfish pirates who still had high ambitions. John Oxenham was on Drake's expedition to Panama in 1572. He thought the whole country could be conquered with 50 men. Incredibly, at first, Oxenham had much success. He conquered the Isle of Pearls off Panama City, where his behavior outraged the Spanish. For all their glorious deeds, all these pirates and privateers died unhappily. Drake was lost at sea. So was Hawkins. The buccaneers who followed Drake, Hawkins, and Raleigh were less heroic, but in some ways freer. They didn't fly the flag of St. George.
Stay tuned for Journeys with host Lauren Miller next here on TVO.